Okay, and yes, you have the link to my portfolio.
Yeah. So why don't you start off? Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself, like where you're at, what are you trying to do,
Yeah.
and give me a sense of who you are.
Okay, so I'm a student at the University of South Carolina, and I created this portfolio on my own simply because I'm a junior and I transferred and I haven't taken any portfolio classes yet. So I kind of had to like do this by myself from the ground up. And so I just bought my first domain a couple weeks or yeah, like 2 weeks ago through Squarespace. So this is my first Squarespace, I guess, website. I have been doing graphic design for a while. I'm a graphic design and illustration major, and I'm turning more into an illustrator now. So I'm kind of in this limbo right now. Do I want to lean more towards brand identity and all that stuff?
Uh-oh.
Hey, I'm sorry. That's probably not helpful at all. My computer has been giving me trouble, so I'm in the process of getting a new computer. And yeah, so I'm using my phone now. So sorry about that. But
So you're in the process of like trying to figure out if you're in illustration or you want to do more brand design.
so I kind of have a little bit of a mix of stuff in my portfolio right now. And yes, so that's kind of where I'm at right now. It's kind of in this like weird limbo of like, what do I want to do? Classic like junior designer type of thing. So I wanted kind of some opinions of like, if I were to give this to, because I'm looking for internships right now and I'm working on that. But if I were to give this to someone that was hiring me, would it still be, I guess, presentable? If that makes sense.
Sure. Let's talk quickly about like this idea of like diving into illustration or being more like design with like illustration as an ad, right?
Definitely.
Did you start off in illustration? Like, is that like a passion? Like, where does that come from?
So I actually started out mainly in design, and last semester, this fall, I took an illustration course, and I realized that I was kind of ignoring that sort of passion of mine because I thought I wasn't like good at drawing. And I realized that a lot of design is illustration and how I could use my illustration for design. And I was like, wait a minute, this is like a lot of fun. So that's kind of where that came from. So recently, actually. So yeah.
Gotcha. Because like I think it's kind of important to separate the two, not like that you need to. I guess my point is that like there is going into the direction of illustration where you're like not going to acknowledge typography. You're going to be more of like working with color, image, like digging up and developing concepts for editorial images, for things like that. And what I think you're kind of doing just by looking at your portfolio is like using your strength, like being able to draw, enjoying that in the process, and like having those elements added into your branding or into your design, whatever it may be. So I don't think you need to necessarily give up one or the other. I just think like, because when I hear like, oh, I kind of like illustration, I kind of like design as well.
Yeah.
I think like you like having illustration as a part of your design process and being able to include that versus like, I want to be an illustrator, I want to get into like animation and things like that, right? Like, is that kind of correct in saying like that's not really where you see illustration going for you?
Wait, so say that again?
So you want to be able to combine the two in your design work or in any sort of project that you're working. You don't really see the path, or you aren't really interested in the path of like going down just as like solely as an illustrator, diving into like potentially the world of like animation, editorial images, things like that.
Yeah.
Or are you still kind of figuring it out?
I'm still kind of figuring it out, because I'm still in my early stages of like, oh my gosh, I like illustration. What is this? I thought I wanted to be a designer, like just, logos, da da da, all that stuff. So I don't know if I have a solid answer for you, which probably isn't too helpful, but yeah. So
No,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
listen, you're right. You're young and you're
Yeah,
early in your,
still
you'll
trying to
figure it out along the
20
way.
figure it out over here.
Where did design like come into play? You said you started off as a designer, or like, started kind of going down the path of learning about design. Like, where'd that come into play?
Um, yeah, so I guess in high school, there wasn't a big art program at my school. It was kind of present, but I took one graphic design course, and we used, oh gosh, we probably used Microsoft Paint. It was awful. But it was fine. But I've always really loved graphic design. Like I would probably consider myself mostly self-taught, simply because I didn't have a lot of, I guess, early instruction in like high school and middle school. But I like did several t-shirt designs in middle school, and then in high school I started making logos for people and did a little bit more in terms of t-shirt design. So I slowly like began developing this sort of like, oh, like these are a lot of things that fall into the graphic design category. So as I started like, exploring what I wanted to do in college, I guess I knew that earlier in high school. I was like, oh my goodness, okay, this is like graphic design. Maybe I should like continue this. So it's always kind of like been there. Like even when I was young, like I was a big artist. Like I've always been like a big artist. So graphic design has kind of like, presented itself to me in like middle school and like early high school. It's kind of like progressed over time. So it's kind of always been there. I just didn't know. Like I had this little book, and it was like you drew letters, and like you put little designs on them. And I found it the other day. I was like, this is literally typography. And I was doing it when I was 5. So crazy stuff, but it's kind of always been there. So I just never knew. So
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like I said, you're figuring it out. You'll eventually come to a point where you decide like, I want to go more in this direction or the other direction. It's not something you need to like figure out now necessarily. So I looked at your portfolio. I will go ahead and pull it up on the screen. And let's talk about this a bit. So you said you put this together, like, I guess, is this something that you kind of needed to have together, or why?
well, I've done a little bit of freelance work recently, but like since, I went to a school in a different location, so I had like 2 clients there, and then I moved. So when I moved here, I was like, wait a minute, okay, I need to have more of an updated portfolio. So this is my updated portfolio. So that's kind of why I wanted to have it. So I had one, but it was through Adobe Portfolio, and I was like, I don't like this. So this is why I've created a new one. So I kind of have to have it anyway. But that's just because I'm kind of doing a little bit of freelance. In fact, I was the one who asked the question about, oh crap. I asked a question on one of your videos, but now I can't remember. Anyway,
Something about portfolios or something like that.
yeah, I don't remember, but I did. So yeah.
No worries. Okay, cool. So I clicked through some of your projects. first glance, I mean, like these bottom three I find to be kind of somewhat more interesting because like I've seen so many of the, the business card mock-up and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I will say this, like the reason why I think these are a little bit more interesting is because they have that element of illustration. Now,
Mhm.
I don't know if these are any of these projects that you have on your homepage specifically for clients.
My business card was for a client, and yes, yeah, the rest are schoolwork slash personal. My publication one was a little bit more personal, but had elements of like school, but mostly school. So yeah.
Okay. This one was the coolest for me so far, just kind of looking at this.
Yeah, that
Um,
one.
and I think this one kind of for me, like helps to develop this idea of how you can continue to use like illustration in, and I don't know, again, you're young. I don't want to like tell you to do one thing or the other because like part of it and part of the joy is like figuring it out. Like again, one day you're going to come upon a moment where you're like, man, I actually don't like doing this part of design or whatever it may be. Like I actually just want to continue to draw cool stuff. And like again, that's the fun part. And this for me is really interesting, not only because like I think it's really cool illustration. You've decided to like apply it in a few different ways. But like what you see online sometimes is like these illustrators that have that grounding in design, and instead of, well, they also do client work, but they'll do a lot more work that is personal projects or things that they kind of develop on their own, and they'll use that design background to apply it in all these different applications. And I've always thought that's like a really awesome way to go about like whether whether it makes you money or not, like being able to kind of put these things out in the world is always fun, and it's always fun to kind of take the time to work on those projects. So I thought this was really cool, and I think like that is sort of like the combination of how you're learning about design and also how you're figuring out how you enjoy illustration, right? I'm sure like the idea was, hey, let me, I didn't read too much into this, but like the concept of I Spy, or you spy, you
Yeah, you.
you spy, right? And then you're like, cool, I can create a cool word mark for it. But like that's not enough, so how do we kind of like make this a little bit more real, right? So like let's apply it to some packaging, some coasters, some things like that. And that is sort of that like nice little combination, that nice little area of design and illustration coming together. So I think that's really cool. What do you need to use your portfolio for right now? Are you trying to get more clients, or are you just trying to make it through school? Like, where are you at?
It's actually a little bit of both. So am not I'm not currently working with any clients, but it is kind of okay, so I guess it's more for three things. It's for school, it's for potential clients, and there's gonna be a third reason, and now I'm blanking. It's mostly for school and clients and internships. So yeah.
Is that something that you're focusing on right now? Like, yes,
Yeah.
there's three things. I guess part of the school part is that like they want you to have one. Part of the freelance thing is like a little bit of future proofing, so you can like kind of have this in place now as you go along. Is internships like the sort of focus right now?
Yes, as of now, since I'm, I guess, a junior in college, I have to have an internship to graduate. And also like, while I don't need it now, I actually needed my senior year. I just want more experience and more direction about what I want to do. So I'm just kind of starting a little bit earlier. So yeah.
Good on you. Good on you for doing that. I think I did 2 years at community college and then jumped right into state college.
Mm.
And my first year, I jumped into internships, and that was like the biggest help.
Yeah.
And I took an internship every semester. So again, like that also, you see the question of like, or you see like the comments about like job applications having 3 years of experience. And I kind of like sort of laugh at it a little bit because like you should be, as a creative at least, you should be taking internships in school, and you should be that is all applicable experience. So like when they say 3 years, sure, if you have a year, 2 semesters, 3 semesters of experience, like you have more of an upper hand than say someone who's just graduating, didn't do any experience at all, and is now trying to figure it out, right? So I kind of like that's great that's great that you're doing that. Okay, so let's like look at this through the lens of getting internships, right? Because you're young, you're in school still. It's not like you're going to go totally ham on just finding freelance clients, and you're not exactly in that place. But from an internships perspective, do you have any ideas of like potential places around South Carolina or North Carolina that you want to work at?
Yeah. So there's one, I guess there are two that are at my top right now. And they kind of fall into, I guess, my two categories of like, what do I want to do with my life? I guess the public library has a great children's section, and I have connections with, I guess, the head librarian, and there's an in resident or an artist in resident something or another. And one of my professors was one of the artists one year. So the public library, the children's section, I'm thinking about possibly reaching out to them and developing something or another in that direction. And then, so there's another one, which is more of like graphic design. I guess strictly logos and brand design and all that stuff and identity. And it's called Roads Design, and they help public schools in the area develop, I guess, new, well, they help them like, like with their logos and their social media and like all that stuff, like the full 9 yards.
What's it called? Is it called Roads?
RHODS Design, and then like if you type in Columbia, South Carolina.
Branding, cool.
Yeah. So they help schools in the area, which I think is really cool because I actually started out as and this is kind of where I don't have the early internships because like first I was at a small private school my first year of college, and then second year took fall semester, was there, changed to studio art with major in graphic design, but I was only taking 3 graphic design courses because that was the concentration. And I was like, I don't like this, I'm going to transfer. So now I'm getting my BFA, and previous I was getting a BA. So I'm kind of like, scrambling a little bit, but it is what it is. So I have a background in education. So, because I started out as an education major. And so that's why I was like, oh, this is cool. And also they help, tons of different schools. And I like a lot of like different things going on. So kind of like not having like one singular client or one singular like, brand to work with, multiple different projects. I kind of like that. So.
Okay. So in terms of like an agency or design studio or something like that.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, good thing for you is I'm guessing these internships would last like only a semester. So there's nothing stopping you from trying to go for both and even trying to go for both the same semester and then seeing which one wins out, which is awesome. Because I do think it would be, you have a great point. Like you have this background in education, you have a passion for it. I think it would be awesome to be an artist in residence at a public school library. Like that sounds like such a fun thing to do. Yeah. Like why not? And then also like having that interest to gain the experience of an agency to like be able to work on different clients to see how that business runs is really important as well. And that'll give you a really good sense of, as a designer, like, do you enjoy working in an environment like this? Do you want to do more of this stuff? So that's really cool as well. So back to your portfolio. I actually think so. Is this website your only portfolio thing right now? Is this what you're mainly sending to like these internships or applications?
Yes, mainly. I mean, I have an Instagram, but like that's more like illustration, I guess. I don't know. But
I don't recommend sending Instagram. I
no,
think Yeah, it's like a way to show people what you're doing, and it's like attracts people to you, but that's not the ultimate thing you send.
That's like the blog aspect.
Exactly. What I would actually do is get a little, I guess, quote unquote, old school, because this is what I would do. And this is what I did when I was younger. You are applying to these internships right now. That is your focus. You have this idea that you want to go between, you know, getting experience as an agency, that more traditional design, and still having opportunities to do illustration, to work in more of like that sort of focus of an area. I would create like a PDF, or do you know how to use Figma? So you could do it in Figma pretty easily. It's not like anything crazy, you don't need to go bust your ass like learning the
Yeah.
ins and outs of it. Essentially, like what you would do is just create, 19 by 20 slides, put a layout on it with images, just like you would on a website,
Mhm.
and you send that as a link. I don't know, like if people are sending PDFs as attachments anymore, but I know that like this idea is the same thing, just through a URL, so you could do that. And I would develop like your illustration focused one, and I developed your design focused one. Now, they don't necessarily have to be completely different. I imagine, since you're young, you may not have like a ton of different stuff. And all it could be is that you make your slides the same way that you have your pages here. And I'll just show you really quickly. Let me open up my Figma share. So we're looking at Figma now. Let me just adjust this. This is
I
a
was supposed
project.
to,
I'm sorry?
is it kind of like Behance?
No. So this is like actual like software app that I would use to make like websites, but it works for a ton of different stuff. So like, how to use Illustrator, chances are you can learn this fairly quickly. I would just create a bunch of different slides that are, let's just say 1920 by 1080. This is your cover slide. And let me just make this really big so we can see it. This is your cover slide. This is your project 1, project 2, so on and so on and so on, right? And what you're going to do is you're going to design these like, nice layouts. You're going to make it kind of feel like it's something from you. Again, it's pretty easy. You select type, you change the fonts, you add color, things like that. Fairly simple, nothing crazy. And I would create slides for each of these projects, right? I would do like anywhere from 3 to 4 slides for a project. I would try to get like 3 of your best projects. And I think if I look at your website, I think this Columbia one is pretty interesting because you have that combination of typography, illustration. You started to work in this idea of like, hey, what was like how did I develop this concept, colors, things like that, this like mood board. And this is pretty cool. What I would say is you probably will need to, build these out a little bit more and make it a little bit more robust. So something I see a lot, right, is like when you're young, you kind of just throw up the final images and you're like, this is what everything looks like after I was done. Great. Something that a lot of people appreciate along the way is like, hey, how did you arrive to picking these color choices? I know you have this mood board here, but you're not really articulating it. And you want to make sure you do that. Also, like, feel free, I would actually recommend like articulating what out of this mood board like kind of helped you understand how this was going to turn out. Like that is really important. I think that's what a lot of people tend to overlook about like design. Yes, is about creating these wonderful experiences, these beautiful outcomes, but it's also like articulating and explaining how you got to that. So figuring out like, okay, cool, you have these slides, you rehash these any way you want, but like, how do we arrive at this color scheme? How do we arrive at using what is that, the queen
Or king or something like that. I actually don't like chess.
Exactly. So like figuring out, like, I mean, that's really important too, right? Like, how did you arrive at this piece being the, like the kind of masthead for the logo. Also, I've noticed that you have like a little tooth here, you know, like how did you come up with that? Why are these patterns, or how do you plan on using these patterns? You know, typography, explain all of these points. So these are only 2 slides. So like, you know, there you go. You could have your first slide. You could have your first slide be, where's my Figma again? So your first slide could be like the introduction of the project. Your second slide could be elements, explain elements plus explanation. And then, or not even elements of that, like how did you develop the concept? Elements plus explanation, and then like, again, more final outcome stuff, right?
Gotcha.
And that goes back and forth, right? That goes for your website, that goes for this like idea of like, you know, a slide or a presentation, because, you know, everything that you're going to write for that like slide one by one, you know, if you were to explain it on an interview or an internship interview, you could just, you know, put that right on your website, and it's going to make your website that much better. That was the one thing I noticed immediately, is that like, I just have a page of images. Sure, you have this design concept. So in order to satisfy the nature of the profession, I settled for crowns, because not only is it a play on a dental term, but Columbia crowns. Gotcha. Okay. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so here's like your page 1, right? Or that introduction. The Columbia crowns are stressful for dentists to escape the stress. And also, like, this is all slide 1.
Gotcha.
Then we go into like, you know, how you start to do research, blah, 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 this, that, the other thing. And then that's like your slide 2, your slide 3 is like how you came, you know, what did you come up with, and then so on. But being able to write that stuff down, get it out of your head and explain that, and then not only do you have it for this like portfolio you're going to send to internships, you have it for your website, is going to be that much better. You know, it's not like the prettiest, right? People, especially designers, are like, no, I just want to make stuff, I don't want to have to write. It's something that I believe separates a lot of people. You know, if you're able to articulate your idea and not just keep it in your head, like people are going to see that, it's going to resonate with them, because, you know, the people that you end up working with, you know, dentists, a dentistry chess club, you know, like they're not creative in a lot of senses. They may be a little bit in certain ways, but like not the same level as you. So being able to explain it to them is going to be that much better. And that's going to like transition later on when you start like working with real life clients and things like that. So yeah, I would do that for like, I would pick your 3 strongest projects. I like this, I like this. Maybe tell me a little about this project. Actually, here, pick out of the, so I like these 2. Out of these 3, pick one and tell me about it.
Okay, so for I'm trying to pick the one that I can probably like. Well, for eSpy, since I know we talked about that, my professor has this project that she does every year, and it's where she gives us, I guess, a random word generator, and she's like, okay, you're gonna, you know, use this random word generator, and you're going to see, this was last year, so I'm trying to.
Which one are we referring to?
Sorry.
Which project are we referring to?
Oh, eSpy.
No. I don't want to hear about that one. I don't want to hear about Columbia crowns. I want to do the other. Like, pick one of these 3. So either Gracewell, Outside the Lines, or this pizza stuff, and then just pick.
Okay.
Which one?
So what would you like me to do again? Sorry.
Pick one of these 3 projects. So Gracewell, Outside the Lines, or this pizza one. Just pick one of those 3 that you like or that you think is something that you're proud of.
I like the pizza drawings.
This one? Okay.
Yeah.
Now tell me about this project.
This one's my most recent one, and it's just like a little series of pizza monsters. So we had a client that came in, and he said that he needed help with his stickers for his company. And he needed help with his stickers for his company, so we all drafted different patterns and stickers for him. And I had a lot of fun with it because I got to, I guess, experiment more with my illustrated side. And he wanted a 90s look, and yes.
Okay. So would this be one of the ones that you'd want to present to like an internship, whether it be for the library or for that, branding house?
Probably not for the branding house, but for the library, definitely.
Okay, cool. So few things. This again, back to this idea of like we're going to create a presentation to send for these internships. What I was thinking is you pick 3 projects. You could do these slides for like say 4 of them. And at the end of the day, all you're going to do is like, if you were to send that same presentation to the branding house, you would take your 2 graphic design centric projects or projects that you think relate to that branding internship. You're going to make those in the front. And then the third one is going to be like your fun wild card that you're really excited about that gives you personality. Same thing with the library. You're going to take your 2 that relate the most. And then the third one is going to be, yeah, I can do all this stuff. Like I'm good at illustration, but I can also bring in this like extra skill that I have. So that's the idea. So whatever out of those 3 you pick for each of those, right? Just be mindful, like 2 of the ones that relate the most to the internship, and then 1 that is sort of like, I also do this really fun thing that I'm excited about, and I weave it into my design process or my process. With this pizza one, just really quickly, it's great that you're like, that you're showing work that you did for a client that might be like on a smaller scale. Like, hey, this client we've worked with in the past. I was tasked with just like developing stickers for the project that I got to illustrate completely. Again, you just want to like spread out how you're explaining it, right? So like, boom, that's like our first slide. Second part is the client asked specifically that he wanted like a 90s sort of grunge theme with it. And so we put together a mood board that resembled some of the 90s artwork, comic book artwork, because that's like the client's thing. That's what the company's about, whatever it may be. I think, when you're trying to include original sketches, I think like more is better. And this is small and dainty, so I'll overlook this really quickly. And if you have more of those sketches and you include a lot more of them. Sketches to patterns. You have any more pattern stuff?
Oh, do I have any more pattern stuff? I have more colors. I mean, that's about it. I just made 1 pattern because it's a really large project and he didn't ask for a pattern, and so I created one.
Nice.
It was
Okay,
probably,
cool.
This is also another thing I think that you could do. So
that is perfect. Love that initiative. I would put more of those on here because this right here of like uploading the sketches, colors and characters, pattern making, like, yes, that is like, I think as a designer, as someone who works in design knows that is the process. I don't need to see it. What I would like to see is more of the pattern. If you have different colors of the pattern, if you have more orientations of the pattern, it could even be like, 2 big side-by-side images that are this pattern right here, this green one, and then just another one. And exactly what you just said, like the client didn't ask for the pattern, but I wanted to develop this because I thought this would be a really nice execution that they could use later on. Short and sweet, it just kind of adds to this project. GIF creation. Cool. Is this one GIF? Is this like one of the only GIFs you guys developed?
Yeah, GIF that I developed for the project. So yeah.
Gotcha.
This is all by myself. I mean, like everyone in the class like created their own, but like this was like mine. So
awesome. Again, I think if you have the time and you're willing to do some extra work, maybe make like 2 or 3 more.
Okay.
And then show like, as your explanation is like, hey, I took another step forward, or I took it a step further and developed some animations that could be used on social and stuff like that.
Mm.
I mean, again, this is a great start. Just trying to think of like how you can better present it to make it feel a little bit more quote unquote beefy, where, you know, it shows that you went above and beyond. It shows that you kind of had the mind and had the thought of like, yeah, I have these great illustrations. Let's present these illustrations in a bunch of cool ways to get the client to agree, you know, to get the client to sign on to doing this.
Mm.
And then if these are stickers, I would go back to the client and be like, give me some stickers. Let me go paste them along everywhere and take pictures of those. Because what I think happens here is that this starts to feel more like I don't think there's any mention of sticker on here, right? There is no mention of sticker anywhere on this page. So immediately, like, again, coming from someone who has dealt with a lot of recruiters, I review this as one almost, where they're just going to look at your page and people like that are getting job applications, they're just going to look at your page. They're going to go, all right, cool. She came up with like an illustration character for some kind of story about pizza or something like that. That is a possibility, you know? So how do we avoid that, you know, and how do we present this in the case that it was meant to be? There's nothing wrong with it. Like, you have a case study about stickers. I think that's great, but we need to show that. So whether it's like, and you can decide whether or not you want to do this. I'm not saying you have to. You could decide to go get those stickers from the client, paste them around just like funny places, take a picture of it and put them on this page. You could have the stickers made yourself, go get like a sample pack made from, you know, a local sticker printer and do that yourself as well. Or you cannot do any of those. Up to you how far you want to take this. But at the end of the day, you know, you've already sort of mentioned like, yeah, the client didn't ask for this, but I did it anyway. You can already kind of see how those steps sort of add to like your character as a creative, and it'll kind of translate over as you continue to you know, get more experience. So yeah, I think that would be really cool. All right, so any other questions? You know, I think we looked a little bit about your portfolio. I know we didn't really talk too much about like the overall website or the overall design, because I think right now for you, the focus is like getting an internship, getting that experience. And this is ultimately going to change over the next year and a half anyway. So I don't want you spending too much time like trying to go ham on a Squarespace website. I think it's totally fine to have like a solid presentation that you're going to speak to in internship interviews or any sort of interview. So that's like totally okay. But any sort of questions that, you know, you might have, or you want to go over, things that we didn't cover really quickly?
I would say, when you look at my website, what like is the first thing you think of? Like, do you think, oh, like this is a graphic designer, or do you think, oh, this is more of an illustrator? I know that's kind of like a weird question, but out of curiosity, like, I mean, when I look at it, I'm like, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Or like, that's like a wide array of like stuff. What does she do?
That's funny. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff there.
So I'm like,
That's always like what people will say. There's a lot of stuff here. Great. And people like that. People like when they see a lot of stuff, right? Because it gives them opportunities to mess around and click. Do I get a sense if you're a graphic designer and illustrator, like one or the other? No. Do I think you need to have that? No. I think you're young, you're in school, you're figuring it out, you're cataloging your work, and let that be the case. You know, like, don't stress about nailing the idea of I'm a graphic designer or I'm an illustrator right now.
Okay.
You know, like at the end of the day, again, you're going to have a moment sometime in the future where you're like, I don't want to do any of this stuff anymore, or I don't want to do it right now. You know, I want to do other stuff right now. And so like, you don't need to, like, is there someone telling you need to pick one or the other?
No.
So just do both then. Just continue to do both. But I will say this.
Mm.
Don't let one, whether it's design or illustration, be like don't let it become the main thing, right? Like, so if a client, if someone gets in touch with you and wants to work with you, do your best to figure out what is going to be super helpful for them. Don't let your bias of like, oh, I want to do a really cool illustration. Is that illustration going to be helpful? You know, is sort of kind of what I'm saying. Or is like the design going to be helpful? And kind of ask yourself that. Don't let like don't let it, yeah, I don't know how to articulate it exactly. Figure out like, as you're enjoying all of these things, right? Enjoy them, you know, scratch the itch of like, well, I want to take this illustration further. Absolutely, go do that. But when it comes time to actually do some work that's, you know, someone's going to pay you or something, give them the opportunity to explain what they need, really listen, and then determine what skill of yours is going to be best to help them solve that problem.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. No,
Well, it allows you to not have to make a decision doing one or the other anyway.
exactly. Exactly. That's why I have all of it on one page, because I'm like, well, if you want one thing, it's there. If you want the other thing, it's also there. So pick one.
I think if you're going to kind of continue to use both, right, in your work, I think you would be better off trying to figure out a way to make all the products feel equal on your website, right? Whereas right now, of course, the first thing that people might think is that you do some sort of logo and marketing material design, right? And that might be your intention, but it's kind of up to you to figure out what that intention is. Like, do you want people to see that you can, you know, apply your design skills all the time and only that? Or do you want them to see that you are doing both of them and you can use them in ways that might help them? So like figuring out a way to present that work that makes everything feel equal, that makes it feel like you spent the time to, that you spent the appropriate amount of time on all of the projects, rather than just like having, you know, one project as a really cool case study, and then like you just have a page of your illustrations that are just slides that I can click through, right? Like that I think also, like, yes, you have a portfolio website and you can absolutely throw images on there, but you're eventually going to come to this point where like things start to feel like you gave it more time without maybe that being the case. Like an illustration takes forever, but it also takes a long time to articulate and write out, you know, things about the process or whatever it may be. So instead of just throwing work on the website whenever you're done, try to like write a case study about it for each of them, so that they all start to feel like you gave each one the same amount of time.
Okay, gotcha. No, that's
Because
very.
at the end of the day, someone looks at your website and they say, wow, these are cool images. They don't care. They don't think about how much time that illustration took, you know? But if all the pages reflect the same amount of work that you put into it, where you wrote about the process, you wrote about the final execution, you wrote about this, then that communicates to them that you're taking the time and each project should be considered the same.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. No, thank you. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I think that's like mainly what I wanted to cover, just because like I needed someone to look at it and be like, okay, this is what I see, this is what I think, this is what I think that this is the kind of general direction I think that you should take with it. Da, 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 da. So I think that's kind of like, I didn't have many questions simply because that's exactly what I wanted, and you kind of like covered all the ground. So thank you. So yeah, that's kind of it. So thank you so much. But yeah.
Awesome. Well, it was nice meeting you, Constance.
Yeah, it's nice.
You know, let yourself figure it out. Don't choose one or the other. Actually, the quote unquote is like, you're still figuring it out. You know, let that happen. And yeah, stay in touch. I'll probably send over an email with like a little feedback thing if you don't mind filling that out. And if you have any questions, you have my email.
Okay, of course. Thank you so much for doing this also. Yeah.
No problem. Good luck, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you. Bye. Have a good day.